Happy hello everyone! There is a very famous German word called Schadenfreude. It means happiness at the misfortune of others. Here in the United States, we call it comedy.
My name is Ryan Wingfield, and my job is to make people happy. After years of doing stand-up comedy, I've devoted an entire year to the study of happiness. Join me each week right here on a Road Comics Road to Happiness.
A lot of people make fun of Germany for having a word like Schadenfreude. Who else but the country that's known for a lack of sense of humor, not to mention the Nazis, would have a word for something that so many of us consider inappropriate? First of all, Germany isn't the only country with a word like Schadenfreude. Similar words and phrases exist in Finnish, Dutch, Norwegian, and Swedish. So not only is the concept somewhat universal, but it is also essential to what I do for a living. If you think about it, almost all comedy is Schadenfreude to some degree. If a fat comedian makes jokes about his weight, you're laughing at him. Political jokes are at the expense of those in power, and even so-called joke book jokes have a doctor's patient or bartender or farmer's daughter who ends up getting the raw deal of a situation. This is something that all great comedians have known for a long time. Mel Brooks even famously said, "Tragedy is when I cut my finger. Comedy is when you fall into an open sewer and die." His point, although greatly exaggerated, is that while we all hate misfortune when it happens to us, we can enjoy an even greater misfortune when it happens to someone else. And at this point you're probably saying, well, maybe some people feel that way, but I certainly would never. Well, odds are you're lying to yourself. Scientists who study Schadenfreude believe that it is so common it can be considered a basic biological response in humans. It's part of the social comparison theory, the idea that when others around us have bad luck, we look better to ourselves. It's kind of like a self-affirming boost to our ego. Of course, this doesn't mean that we're all monsters. I'm sure none of you have ever laughed when you've seen a starving child on a Red Cross commercial. Well, maybe some of you have laughed, but those of us with souls would never think of it. Yeah. On the other hand, a lot of us have probably smiled when we've seen a politician or celebrity get caught up in a scandal. Personally, I loved the second G.I. Joe movie because Channing Tatum's character died in the first 5 minutes. Yeah. So why is it that we enjoy the misfortune of some, but not others? One word: envy. What? A study by Princeton University found that people are more likely to smile at the misfortune of others rather than the good fortune of others, but only for people who they envy. This explains why the powerful and good-looking are the subject of gossip magazines. No one wants to read about a janitor who has a drinking problem, unless of course he crashes his car into somebody rich or good-looking. This is also why we comedians rarely pick on the weak. No one likes to laugh at the victim, especially if the person making the joke is coming from a position of power. Here's an interesting psychological test. The next time you watch a stand-up comedian perform, pay attention to the first joke they do when it's on stage. 9 times out of 10, that will be a self-deprecating joke, because that makes it okay for the audience to laugh at us, which in turn makes it okay as us comedians to poke fun at other people. Look at some of the top-grossing comedians from the last year, and you'll see that a lot of their jokes are about themselves. Gabriel Iglesias made $8 million talking about being fluffy. Louis C.K. made $9 million talking about being a fat, balding loser. Aziz Ansari made $9.5 million talking about how he couldn't get a date. And Kevin Hart made $28.5 million talking about being short. So while we might all experience Schadenfreude from time to time, I'm sure it comes as no surprise that there are some people who experience it more often than others. For example, people who have low self-esteem. Men are also more likely to experience it than women, especially when they see a misfortune that they consider well-deserved. And sports fans are among the highest when it comes to Schadenfreude, especially when their team's rival suffers a big loss. So the next time you feel a case of Schadenfreude, maybe take a minute and consider what it is that makes you envious of the person who's having the misfortune. For example, if I'm being honest with myself, I enjoyed watching Channing Tatum's character die in G.I. Joe because he's a really good-looking guy, you know? And he's successful. And he's rich. And he has a full, thick head of hair. And I also liked him in The Hateful Eight. Yeah, he got shot in the head in that one. Spoiler! That's all for this edition of A Road Comics Road to Happiness. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and leave any happy comments below. Next week, sing a happy song. Music for a better mood. Warning, I will be singing. Until then, stay happy.